Picture the scene. A man sits hunched in a cracked, weather-beaten barrel on the dusty streets of Athens. The air is sharp with cold, the kind that bites through the skin, yet he wears nothing to shield himself from it. Around him, a few mangy dogs prowl lazily. The only creatures he allows is company. He has no home, no furniture, no glittering possessions to guard yet in this state of apparent poverty. He possesses a kind of wealth so rare that it unsettles even the mightiest rulers. That man was Diogenes, the iconoclast of philosophy. When Alexander of Macedon, the conqueror who made empires tremble and whose name still thunders across history, approached him with the arrogance of a man who thought the world lay in his palm, he offered Diogenes anything his heart could desire. Kingdoms, riches, honors, power, nothing was beyond his reach. But Diogenes, resting in his shabby barrel as if it were a throne, lifted his gaze only to utter words so simple, yet so devastating. "Move aside. You're blocking my sunlight." That answer struck deeper than any sword, because it revealed a sovereignty Alexander could never buy. History records that Alexander, who bent continents to his will, admitted to his companions in awe, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." Think about that for a moment. A man who commanded armies like chess pieces, who collected crowns like trophies, envied a homeless philosopher who lived with dogs. Why? Because Alexander could conquer the world, but Diogenes had conquered himself. The emperor held sway over soldiers, cities, and wealth beyond measure, but Diogenes held dominion over something no army could protect, and no fortune could. Purchase unshakable freedom, complete mastery of his own being. That kind of independence is a form of power so absolute that even kings recognize their inferiority before it. And this is precisely why such stories are buried, reduced to footnotes, rarely taught with the gravity they deserve, because they reveal something unsettling, something society would rather you not notice. They show that true authority does not lie in crowns, thrones, or empires. It lies in self-sovereignty. Those who possess it cannot be bribed, seduced, or controlled. And throughout history, the most dangerous figures, the thinkers who shattered illusions, the visionaries who redirected civilization's course, have always shared this one trait. The world tried to brand it as weakness, as deficiency, as failure to conform. Yet time and again, it emerges as the mark of the strongest souls. They chose the road of solitude. But solitude is not emptiness. It is the purest form of presence, distilled into its sharpest essence. Think about it. What if the very state you were warned against, the condition they painted as deficiency, is in fact the fertile soil where true greatness takes root? What if the life you are encouraged to pursue, the one described as safe, respectable, and fulfilling, is nothing more than a beautifully decorated prison, a cage without steel bars, but with walls made of duty, conformity, and silent compromise? Friedrich Nietzsche shattered this illusion when he offered humanity one of its most unsettling challenges, the eternal recurrence. Imagine this: every action you take, every word you speak, every hesitation and every indulgence lived out not once, but endlessly on an infinite loop. Would you collapse in despair at such a sentence, begging for escape, or would you rise and declare with a smile, yes, again, and again, and again? Most shrink from this thought experiment because deep down they recognize they are living a script that is not their own. Their lives are stitched together by borrowed beliefs, by compromises made to appease others, by fears inherited rather than conquered. But there is another kind of man, a rarer man, the one who would laugh at eternity because he knows he authored his existence. He would not fear repetition because his life is not a shadow of someone else's will. It is his own creation, raw and unapologetic. And this is where the line is drawn. On one side, the herd stumbling along paths paved by others. On the other, the creator, the man who tears the script apart and writes his own law into being. Nietzsche gave this man a name, the Urmensch, not a caped savior of childish imagination, but a being who steps beyond categories, beyond inherited morality, who births values from his own spirit instead of swallowing what society serves. Yet such a path cannot be walked in the noise of the crowd. It demands solitude, not the loneliness of those who are terrified of silence, but the solitude of visionaries who refuse to dilute their essence to win applause. Loneliness is starvation for attention. Solitude is a banquet of creation. Arthur Schopenhauer knew this truth intimately. He shaped his life around it, almost monastic in discipline. Mornings surrendered to writing, afternoons given to long contemplative walks, evenings immersed in the company of books and the quiet loyalty of his dog. People mocked him, called him bitter, aloof, detached from human warmth. But Schopenhauer saw deeper than they did, and he carved his insight into words sharp enough to cut illusions to ribbons. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. If he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. That line is not mere philosophy, it is a blade, and it slices straight through the comforting lies that bind ordinary men. Ask yourself with brutal honesty, would Napoleon have carved his relentless path across Europe if his nights were consumed by domestic quarrels, soothing insecurities, and negotiating over trivial matters? Would Einstein have bent the laws of physics, peering into the architecture of the cosmos itself, if his mind had been constantly split between infinity and the petty weight of dinner table disputes? Greatness does not flourish in compromise, it withers there. The married man filters every dream through another person's fear, translating vision into something palatable, manageable, safe. The solitary man, by contrast, permits his vision to stand unbroken wild, dangerous, untamed as it was first conceived. Marriage demands harmony, adjustment, perpetual negotiation. Philosophy demands conviction. Creation demands the kind of ruthless focus that cannot afford dilution. Nietzsche understood this better than anyone. He never married, never surrendered his fire to the slow erosion of domestic comfort. Instead, he poured every ounce of passion into thought, into writing words that still strike like thunder centuries later. His amor fati, his love of fate, was not born in shared consensus or compromise, but from living entirely within the destiny he chose for himself. To embrace fate fully, one must first own it fully, and only the solitary man truly owns his fate. Walk this path deeply enough, and something begins to change. Death itself becomes your companion not as an enemy lurking in shadows, but as a teacher walking beside you. The Stoics knew this well. They whispered memento mori, remember that you must die, not as a morbid fixation, but as fuel, as clarity, as urgency. When you understand that every breath could be your last, You stop wasting your finite energy soothing tempers, bending yourself to keep peace, drowning in the weather of someone else's moods. You begin to live fiercely because you know time is merciless. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of an empire greater than Alexander's, did not find wisdom in the flattery of courtiers or the applause of crowds. His greatness was born in solitude, in the pages of his meditations, where he wrestled with existence alone. You have power over your mind, not outside events, he wrote. Try saying this to a man whose serenity is chained to weather his partner smiles at him or scolds him. That is not power, that is slavery. Slavery without visible chains, but slavery nonetheless. Even Socrates, that mountain of philosophy, endured marriage with Xantippe, a woman infamous for her sharp tongue. When questioned about it, he quipped, "If you can live with her, you can live with anyone." Do you hear romance in those words? No, his marriage was endurance training, not transcendence. And that should make you pause. Is this what you truly want? To make the most intimate bond of your existence nothing more than a daily exercise in tolerance? To reduce your fleeting life to endless negotiation drills when you could instead be forging truths sharp enough to split the illusions of an age? Freedom does not come through bargaining. It cannot be co-authored, cannot be shared in fragments. Freedom must be seized whole. Epictetus warned us that we are actors in a play not of our choosing, but while the role may be given, the performance is ours. The married man performs for an audience of one, rehearsing lines daily to preserve harmony. The solitary man rips the script apart and writes his own role from scratch. He does not rise at dawn because another voice demands it. He rises because he hears the call of his own work, his own vision, his own destiny. Jean-Paul Sartre captured it with ruthless precision when he declared, "Man is condemned to be free." Most people flee from this terrifying burden, rushing into the warm, suffocating arms of convention. And the easiest escape, the most socially applauded retreat, is marriage a polished cell where decisions are shared, responsibility diluted, and identity dissolved into another's shadow. But there exists a different kind of soul, the one who dares to stand naked in the desert of freedom without a map, without a partner, without anyone to carry blame. Alone in that wilderness, he uncovers a truth so unsettling that the masses cannot bear to face it. Existence precedes essence. You are thrown into the world first, raw and undefined, and only then must you choose who you will become. That choice cannot be delegated. It cannot be outsourced. It is yours alone. Emily Dickinson grasped this in silence. She withdrew from the bustle of society, from the expectations of marriage and convention, retreating into her solitude. From that withdrawal, she composed verses so piercing they still slice open the human soul today. She was not incomplete. She was infinite. Albert Camus, staring into the absurd silence of an indifferent universe, chose not despair but rebellion. To live so fully, so consciously free, that one's very existence becomes an act of defiance. The world will point at such people and sneer, selfish, lonely, incomplete. But let them sneer. Wholeness does not come from halves joined together. Wholeness is born through individuation. Carl Jung named this process the integration of every fragment of the self, light with shadow, reason with instinct, the masculine and feminine, the conscious and the unconscious. This is not possible if you refuse solitude, because when men fear their own depths, they push their unclaimed pieces onto their partners, projecting what they cannot face within themselves. What they call love becomes dependency disguised in tender words. The solitary man has no such escape. He cannot run from his shadows. He must confront them head on, wrestle them, absorb them, until he emerges whole. And in that brutal process of integration, he becomes sovereign. History offers proof written in blood and brilliance. Nikola Tesla embraced solitude, and from it he carved electricity's veins into the modern world. Virginia Woolf demanded a room of one's own, and from that sacred solitude poured literature that still towers over time. Florence Nightingale rejected marriage because she recognized her destiny was not to soothe a husband's ego, but to transform medicine itself, reshaping the survival of nations. These were not accidents. They were deliberate choices, acts of radical self-sovereignty, refusals to dilute vision in exchange for comfort. And here lies the secret society dares not whisper too loudly. The greatest works of human thought, the most dangerous sparks of creation, the revolutions that outlived centuries, they were not born from compromise. They were born from solitude, from the silence in which vision sharpens and the soul dares to speak with its own voice. The world will throw parades for your marriage. It will applaud your compromises, shower you with praise for playing the role it scripted. But history will not remember the man who sacrificed his fire to keep another warm. History remembers only those who chose themselves fully, those who walked into solitude not as a curse, but as a forge, and emerged transformed into something immortal. And so the question is no longer about Diogenes defying Alexander, nor Nietzsche walking alone into madness, nor Schopenhauer pacing with his dog. The question now turns to you. Who will you be? Will you spend your fleeting years negotiating away your essence for the illusion of comfort, applauded for a life safely wasted? Or will you walk the lonelier path, the path of solitude, the path of sovereignty, and claim your existence as entirely your own? The world will condemn you as mad, selfish, incomplete. But history has already shown us whose names echo through eternity.